Hello, I'm finally back in my studio, yay! I'm so excited to be home, and what better way to celebrate than by looking at a new art supply. Today I'm going to look at this Kuretake Gansai Tambi Graphite colours in a 6 set, so let's get into it. So this is a fairly new release, and you may have seen other colours very similar to these ones in the form of this Boku Undo set, which I also have, and I did a review on these quite a long time ago. I will link the video at the end of this video so you can check that out as well. And I've used it a little bit, not for a while. It ended up lurking in the back of my watercolour cabinet, but you can see there is a bit of use in these paints, and they're really lovely. They have all of these beautiful shadow colours, and I hunted around to find my swatches that I'd done with these because I couldn't remember which book they're in. I have finally found them, so we'll take a quick look at these, and then I'm going to compare them with the Gansai Tambi ones because I'm fairly sure they are the same colour palette. If I hold those up, they look pretty similar to me. In my old sketchbook, which I have a video on as well if you want to see a full flip through, I have this Boku Undo set down the bottom here with the 6 different shades. So as you can see, they're very much shadow colours. My first thing is to get swatching these new Gansai Tambi colours. It says deep tranquil Gansai Tambi colours with a matte texture and finish specific to graphite. Polishing the surface of graphite Gansai once dry reveals a metallic luster. How interesting. So maybe there is actual graphite in there because graphite always gets really shiny. Let me get it out of this shiny box, speaking of which, because it's kind of annoying, isn't it? Oh, I hate these, they're so hard to open. This box is going in the bin, it's so annoying. Either that or I'm just going to cut off the ends, maybe I'll do that. Because the annoying thing is there's no lid on this, unlike this set which has a full cardboard box. This is just the base of it plus the plastic outer liner. Here we go, I've turned it into a sliding box, so I should just be able to put that in and out a lot more easily. There we go. They're essentially just like any other Gansai Tambi paint that I've ever seen. They come in these large flat pans, and of course they never fill them to the top, which is always super annoying. I wish they did that. Down the bottom it actually does have the names and the numbers of the paints on here, and also thankfully on the back of the pan, so I can pull all of these out and not get them mixed up. So we have graphite red, yellow, green, blue, violet and brown. By comparison, we have in the Boku Undo set a reddish black, yellowish black, greenish black, bluish black, purplish black and brownish black. So they are the same. I'm just not too sure if their formula is going to be the same. Here is my current Etcher sketchbook that I'm working in, and I have a full page spread that I'm probably going to use for this because I already have an idea of what I'm going to do for my artwork. I sometimes get the idea first before I use the art supplies, and I figured it would be quite a good one with these, but I think because these are both so similar, I might as well compare them on the same page to see if they are the same, because I'm so curious. So this was meant to be about these Gansai Tambi ones, but these Boku Undos are going to make more of an appearance than I originally first thought. When I do my painting though, I am going to do it entirely with this set. On to the swatching. So first up I'm starting with graphite red, and I wet the paper first so we can see that really awesome run. There is definitely graphite in these paints because it was splitting out from the pigment when I was letting it run on the wet paper. And there's a considerable difference between the dark mass tone at the top to the diluted paint at the bottom, which is really great. So the graphite yellow also runs, and it's a kind of ugly greenish pigment, but it did actually work out quite well in my painting a bit later in the video. These work much like watercolours, but they are a lot heavier, and so there is a kind of gouache property to them, but that graphite is really heavy. This green was my favourite, and can you see right on the edge there, that grey line? That's the graphite being pushed out. It's really fascinating, and I found it was most noticeable in the green. Once it dries, there are patches of grey graphite in it that are really visible. I think this green is my favourite of all of the colours. It's a lovely bluish colour, it's really pretty. And then we go on to the blue, which is much more of a grey colour and looks just like graphite with a slightly bluish undertone. So the smart thing to do would have been to paint the Boku Undo set out at the same time, so go from graphite red to reddish black, so we could really see them side by side, but I didn't think of that until much later. Never mind, we will see them shortly. But this graphite violet you could see is also quite grey, but it has got a slightly purplish undertone to it, and that one gets nice and dark as well. And last but not least is the graphite brown. This one was really thick and opaque, but it also dilutes out quite nicely into kind of an old-fashioned sepia tone. So I like the colour palette here, they're very muted. Going on to the Boku Undus now, and here we go with the reddish black. The first thing I notice is that yes, the colours are very similar to one another for the most part, but they did behave a little bit differently in the water. I found that the Boku Undo set is lighter in some ways, like it ran more easily, whereas the graphite set does kind of sink to the bottom and feels a lot heavier. It's very hard to describe it. The greenish black in this set is very different to the graphite green. It does have a blacker, more perylene green look to it, whereas the graphite green has that bluer tint. I prefer the graphite green in this instance, but the greenish black is also a really excellent shadow green, and it's really hard to get the pigments out of the brush, so my water has gotten a bit dirty. But anyway, the bluish black just went over the top. I think these ones just feel like they flow more freely. Did I mention that before? I don't remember. But the bluish black and the graphite blue do look quite similar when they are dried, as do the purplish black and the graphite violet. So it's really only the greenish black and the graphite green which are considerably different from each other. Otherwise the other ones are all pretty much the same, so I'm sure they have used same or very similar pigments. The brownish black is a nice one too. So here they all are once they've been dried, and my conclusions are that they are very, very similar. I don't think they're quite the same in some respects though. The biggest difference I'm noticing in here is that this green in particular is showing that graphite coming through. You can see the grey patch there. It's also coming out in the yellow and the red a little bit. So I think this set really does have that extra graphite, and the Boku Undo does not have any graphite in it. It's more of an ink style set. So they're same but different, pretty much. So I'm going to do an artwork now with the Gansai Tambi set, because this is originally what I was just going to do, but then I remembered I had this set, and I'm so glad I compared them together so you could see as well if it's worth getting the Gansai Tambi set if you already have these, or vice versa. Now to get onto my artwork. So while I was out at Dad's, I drew this picture of Ned Kelly, probably Australia's most famous outlaw. I've been wanting to do a Ned Kelly picture for a while, and I thought these dull colours would work quite well for this. I'm going to trace this into the sketchbook and then do a painting. So I put my light pad underneath and I'm using it to help me trace out my drawing. Ned Kelly is a very famous or infamous bushranger and outlaw who lived in Australia in the 1800s. He's one of these legendary people who is a hero to some people, and others consider him a terrible criminal because he did shoot quite a lot of police officers at the time. I'll put a link in the description below so you can read more about him, but basically he was executed at the age of 25 in Melbourne, and legend has it that his last words were "such is life." But since then, that has been debunked, and more likely he said something along the lines of, "Ah well, I suppose it has come to this," at least according to one article I read from the Monash University. Who would know? I much prefer "such is life." We won't let the truth get in the way of a good story. Anyway, onto my painting. I started out with the graphite blue, and I'm painting in his armour. He really did have a metal bucket-like helmet and armour like this. They have it on display in one of the museums down here, I think. There are photos of it, and there are quite a lot of statues dotted around Australia, especially in Victoria. But he's just such a fascinating and iconic figure. I think most people are intrigued by him and his very brief life. Lived in the early days of Australia's convict and colonist history. I think the graphite paints worked really well for this. It's how I imagined it. I was just thinking, what can I paint that has a really muted look to it? And for some reason, Ned Kelly just popped into my head. I thought his armor would be really cool painted in something that looks quite graphite-y. And the picture that I found is based off an artwork I saw on a tin sign that someone might hang in their man cave. I just thought it looked quite neat, and I really liked the way that his coat is flowing out. It's a more cartoonish representation, and unfortunately I don't know who the original artist is, but I've just done my own version, a copy of it, so it's not fully original, but I did draw this from scratch. I did not trace any of it. I'm getting better at drawing, yay! Except I don't know how to draw a gun, or paint one for that matter. This ain't America. So I just kind of did my best with that, and they turned out relatively okay. His hands are a bit wonky, it's not perfect, but I did have a good time painting this. That graphite yellow is the perfect colour for his coat, and I was able to get quite a lot of value out of them, just using varying degrees of water to dilute them out or make them thicker. These paints are really thick, and they do remind me a lot of those art graph Taylor chalk things that I have done a video on previously. They have that really heavy gouache feel, but then they also behave like watercolours if you add enough water to them, so they're pretty versatile, and they also lift quite easily if you add more water onto them and scrub any mistakes off. So they're great like that, they're not staining at all. And yeah, I really enjoyed using them. I think I'm done. It's really hard to know sometimes when an artwork is finished. I think I'm going to leave it as it is for now anyway, because I just don't want to mess with it and wreck it. Now it says that you can polish this to make that graphite really shine. I don't know how to do that exactly. I'm just going to use a tissue and polish some of the metal part here. Not sure that that has done anything. I think I'll just leave that well enough alone too. But otherwise, I liked the set. You can see they're a little bit used here, but there's still plenty in there. A little does go a long way, which is always nice. So here are the swatches once again, just to remind you. This lot up here, and then I just tested them against the Boku Undo set. Love that green, that is my favourite out of all of them, and it's just a nice little set. It didn't cost too much. I'll link it down below if I can find it again. I mean, they are pretty limited in what you can paint, but if you like to do a lot of this kind of sketch, or even maybe some studies, things like that, where you want to do something a little more monochromatic, this is a nice sketch set to do that with, I think. And they're just as good as all of the other Gansai Tambi paints that I've ever tried. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it was helpful just to see what this set of graphite colours is like. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and click the subscribe button, and I'll be back again really soon for more videos. In the meantime, take care out there and have a wonderful day. I'll swatch you later. Bye!